So, yeah, we're going to talk about QRP. We'll talk about contesting and DX, and got lots to talk about. We're going to first talk about the mindset of a QRP, just so we're kind of all squared away on the whole mindset and psyche behind that. QRP and DBs, I know that we all know that, but we'll just do a quick refresher. Talk a little bit about how I got lured into QRP back in the day. And I have to work in a little bit of POTA because I do parks on the air, and I do that all QRP style, all portable, of course. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll hit the latest. My newest little radio in the shack is a Russian-made Lab 599 DX TX500. That's an all-mode transceiver. So we'll talk about that too. So let's see if we can get this to advance. First slide. And, oh, there we go. Okay, I'll have to use my mouse. So the big thing to understand is, up front is that for active QRPers, right, full-time QRPers, QRP is really a mindset, okay? Folks that do low power communications really take a minimalist approach to it, right? They kind of push the limitations with reduced power in equipment. The antennas are oftentimes wire, relatively simple. A lot of QRPers will work off battery or solar power. For years, I ran an 817 with an SLA for a battery, just simple 12 volts. But probably the biggest thing too is the KISS principle, right? Keep it simple, stupid. There's just this factoid out there that the QRPers really like to keep things simple. And in my opinion, okay, this is strictly my opinion, there's two types of active / full-time QRPers. You've got those folks that dabble with it, right? That I wouldn't say they're full-time QRPers because they're not dedicated to it, but they do dabble with QRP and work QRPers and things of that nature and have a lot of fun. But for the full-timers, you've got your dedicated folks, which are those that kind of have a mix of homebrew and commercial rigs, of course, all QRP, low power, mostly homebrew antennas, right? They could be wire, it could be a homebrew Yagi, and of course they work less than 5 watts, right? And then in my opinion, you've got that other facet, which is the hardcore categories. And these are the folks that use strictly homebrewed equipment, right? Could be from a kit, but a lot of them go to the junk box. They've grabbed a schematic, they've made their own thing. They stick predominantly to wire antennas and really abide by the less is best principle, right? Real minimalist approach. And several of these folks really go with the QRPP. QRPP is less than 1 watt, okay? So, I know a few of those folks, and they're kind of a hoot to talk to, right? Because they really take it to the nth degree when it comes to QRP. So when you're talking to QRPers, it's always, they kind of take the simple approach, and that's just the mindset that they have. If you guys have any questions as we move along, feel free to ask. So QRP and DBs, we'll just do the math real quick. Basically each time you double your power, it's a half S unit increase, right? So another way to look at it is what I've got written is that 1 S unit, full S unit, is a gain or loss of about 6 dB, which equates to about, a 4 power increase or decrease from the transmitting station, right, on your end. So an example is if you've got a station that you're receiving that is an S8 on your receiver and they're running 80 watts on their end, they reduce their power to 20 watts, a 4 power decrease. Your S meter is going to read somewhere around an S7. Station reduces to 5 watts, again, 4 times decrease. It's going to be somewhere around an S6. Now that's give or take, and this is math on paper, so it's not perfect, but it gives you an idea. So decreasing from about 80 watts to 5 watts is about a 12 dB decrease or 2 S units on the meter. On the right, this is just a table that I grabbed. I don't remember if it was in the ARL book or not, But basically the gist of it is that if you look at the middle of the table, you'll see 5 watts for your power and dB0 and of course S0. And then as you work up, you double your power, you know, you go to 10 watts. Over on the right, you have a half S unit increase. Go to 20 watts, 1 S unit, and you can kind of follow everything up or down as you go low. And, you know, basically if you worked it out and you go from 5 watts to 1,000 watts, it actually equates to a 3.84 dB gain, or I'm sorry, 3.84 S units, or about 4 S units more. So just to kind of give you an idea, if you went from 1 S unit or one watt, I should say, you're down at minus 1.17. You add that, if you go all the way up to 100, 2.17, that's a difference of about 3.34 S units. So it's just kind of a neat table to play with and something to kind of keep in mind. I'm in the realm of about 2.5 watts is what I use for everything that I do. So a little bit about me. Of course, the call is KA8SMA. That's my original call sign. Live in Traverse City. Been in Traverse City for about 20 years. Started in radio at age 10, and that was all broadcast band DXing. I was really amazed by, you know, AM DXing, or DX at the time with propagation. You know, each night I'd actually go to bed early, especially in the winter, and, you know, sit in bed or whatever, and I'd listen to the clear channels, right? KYW in Philly, KMOX St. Louis, BZ Boston, KRLD Dallas, and so on. And I actually kept a log of all those stations. You know, parents thought I was a little crazy because I'd send off signal reports, you know, to these AM stations, and I get, you know, gobs of stuff back from them in the mail. Of course, AM broadcast led to shortwave listening, Radio Moscow, BC, you know, BBC. I think they really thought I was kind of crazy when I was trying to figure out the propaganda, communist propaganda coming from Radio Moscow back in the day. And then, of course, you know, that kind of led to listening for the woodpecker that would show up from time to time, and other shortwave stations. And finally, I discovered amateur radio back in the early 80s and went to the, I was living in Cleveland at the time, and we had the Northern Ohio Amateur Radio Society. So I signed up for a novice class and got my novice license in '83. And quite frankly, I've always been an HF nut. I did get into, well, after I got my general class, I bought an Icom 2AT, 2-meter handheld, and it still looks brand new. So that'll kind of give you an idea. And that is my only handheld. So that kind of gives you an idea of how much VHF work, you know, I've done in the past. Not always a QRPer. You know, my first station was a Drake 2B with a Knight T50 50-watt transmitter, wire antennas, butternut HF6V. After I got my general, I upgraded to a 530 sugar, ran 100 watts. You know, I was kind of king of the world with the vertical and wires. I was working DX all over the place. Worked well. Then I went to Michigan State, and while I was at MSU, I was at club station W8SH, and, you know, discovered power in a tower while I was at school. And one of the club members brought in his Kenwood station, a 930 sugar, had the matching amp. We hooked it up, and it was like being a god of the airwaves with what we had at Michigan State. It was, DX was simple, you know, day and night, anytime, anywhere, we could pretty much do what we wanted to do. And it was in the late 80s. You guys have all heard of Doug DeMall, right? W1FB. Doug's kind of, he's one of the godfathers of QRP. And when he worked at the ARRL, he had a column, and I'd read it back in the 80s in QST. And I remember and this goes back to the 70s, but they kind of revisited the Tuna-10 transmitter. And I got the schematic. We had a junk box of parts at Michigan State at the club station that was just unbelievable, you know, with most of the guys in the club being electrical engineers and being in the engineering building. We just had gobs of stuff. So before I went home one summer, I built the Tuna-10, and took it home, matched it up with my Drake 2B, and just couldn't believe all the contacts I was making on CW with that 2 to 10 transmitter. So gobs of fun, and that got me into fiddling with a lot of the kits out there, a lot of the transceivers. And you might remember Ramsey Electronics back in the day. Well, Ramsey, they made a transceiver. A few other people out there, or small kit companies, made transceivers. So I started experimenting with those, and I do other things with them, and modify them, and et cetera. And just, it was a great deal of fun. And then in '93, I actually bought a kit, and that's what's showing on the screen here, the QRP Spirit from Oak Hills Research. And it's kind of funny because Doug DeMaw, WNFB, started Oak Hills Research after he retired from ARRL. And in fact, he used to live in Luther, which is about 45 minutes south of Traverse City. And when I bought these kits, he had sold the company to another fella, but these are his design. And these are 2 transceivers I still use today. Really work well, the QRP Spirits. I've got one for 40 meters and one for 30 meters, and just love them to death. So after I built those, I kind of started going QRP full time back in the early 90s. And it was, you know, it was pretty simple, and it was lots of DX and lots of contesting, and 30 meters really kicked it really well. And then in 2000, when Yaesu came out with the 817, I was one of the first to pick that up. And that's the base model, the actual 817, not the ND that they came out with later. And that gave me the opportunity, or the ability to mix it up, because until then it was strictly CW, pretty much for QRP for me. So then I started working sideband. Later I got into digital a little bit, but it was QRP in one package. And that actually, believe it or not, for 20 years, that 817 that you see in the picture was my primary rig. And I contested with that thing, at least on SSB, on phone. Didn't do too well on CW for contesting, because it's just the filters in that are not that great, and it was a stock radio. I didn't add any of the additional filters that I could have. But for sideband, it worked all right for contesting. And on this rig, I did work. I think it was, on this radio it would have been CT3 and CN2AA up on 75. And then also on 40, I've worked a number of years. Well, 40, I've worked a lot of Europe on this as well. And that's, so I mean, this was, and the unique thing about this, because I do like to work portable QRP, and the black box to the left of the radio was my 9 amp hour sealed lead acid battery gel cell. I had an external speaker mounted on it. Of course, a 971 QRP antenna tuner. The radio, I used 450 ohm window line coming into the shack. I had a cheater module in the back for doing a direct plug. And this is just a control box to the right of the radio for flipping to a speaker in the shack and everything else. But what this really gave me the ability to do was, this is a cutting board. And over here on the right side, there's a handle. So I could just take the speaker and wrap it around the radio, and then just pick this cutting board up after I disconnected the wires and just walk out the door. So in 3 minutes, I was out and about going portable. And then if I'm on the ground or on a picnic table, everything is already on a base. So it kind of made a neat home / portable station for me. And this is just a quick photo. This is my old shack. I'll show you the new one in a second, but yeah, go ahead. Somebody had a question? No? Okay. So over here on the left, I got a 530 sugar back in the day. I've kept it all these years. My novice station up on top, Night T50, Drake 2B, my CW QRP Spirits, and broadcast band radio. Then of course my primary right here. And then today, this is what I've got now. I've kind of switched things around. Last year, I acquired this new station, or new desk, I should say. And this is if you're curious, this is a railroad grandmaster's desk. It was a station manager's desk that they use at railroad stations. And
Wow.
yeah, it's really, it's about 115 years old from what I'm told. And the top is slanted, and it really, you'll see it's kind of at about a 20-30 degree angle, which is really cool for writing, and it's nifty for contesting. You know, because you're always on an angle, you know, your fingers don't get tired. You get a keyboard up there. It's
Yeah.
just, everything kind of works out perfect. And then
Nice.
in front, I've got I upgraded to a 7300 because I wanted to get an SDR radio. Last year at the beginning of COVID, these things just went super low in price. So I picked one up, running at 2 to 5 watts output. Got my watt meter up there, my 971 tuner, and then I've got my old novice stuff up top. But what I've recently done is I built a QRP paraset radio from the 4-state QRP group. It's the Bayou Jumper, and it's got a chicken head, cog head in here for basically switching between receive and transmit. Takes you kind of back to the days. Regenerative receiver. It's really, this is something I just built and just got going, crystal controlled. You know, I had a bunch of FT243s that I use on the Night T50, but from back in the days. So those are in there. I use this, or I'm planning to use this for portable operations. And we'll talk about this one on the bottom here in a little bit, but this is my Lab 59 Discovery TX500, the little Russian QRP rig. It's all mode. So we'll I got a slide on that coming up. So what have I got outdoors for QRP? Well, I primarily use 2 antennas. I've got a horizontal loop, a sky loop. Here in the photo, the yellow dash line, the orange line is my property line. And one thing I really don't like about my house, as you'll see, is this crooked driveway. Second house I've owned that has a crooked driveway. I don't know why, but we keep getting them this way. But the red is my loop, and it's about 400 feet, number 12, insulated copper wire. Feed point is at about 40 feet. The green line is my window line that goes out to the feed point at about 40 feet. And then as you go to the backyard, I'm using trees for all my supports. As you go, basically the antenna starts increasing in height. And back here at the highest point, it's about 65, 70 feet up. And then from that point, it starts to descend in elevation, ties into the tree up front and goes back across. And again, we're at about 40, 45 feet in the front. So the neat thing about this antenna, super low noise. In comparison to dipoles, verticals, other things I've experimented with, this has much lower noise than anything. And I have found if I can hear them, I can work them. Which, you know, when I first put this antenna up, I wasn't real sure how it was going to work. I hadn't modeled it. I was kind of going with the idea, bigger the better. Let's just see how this works. It'll tune 80 through 20 meters. And in a minute, I'll show you some modeling that Dave NU8A has done on this. But also, in addition to this, I've got an inverted V. I used to have a homebrew Yagi 2-element beam that was mounted up here on this cupola above the garage, kind of near the center of the photo there, just kind of on the low end of the garage. And that, you know, was homebrewed, didn't last forever. It was more of an experiment, lasted several winters, but I ended up taking that down. And for this winter, I just got a 20-meter inverted V that's up there that's also fed with window line. But some of the EZNEC graphs, or I should say plots that Dave put together, he modeled this, oh golly, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I was kind of curious as to what he was going to find. And on 10 meters, what we've got is a elevation angle of about 10 degrees at about 12 and a half, 13 dBi. And, you know, with a takeoff angle off toward, well, Southern Europe, Northern Africa, somewhere in there. It really, you know, the only thing, this antenna works great. I just wish it were directional, right? Which it's not going to be. But it, you know, just can't turn it. I wish I could. But on 15 meters, we're about 14 degrees, about 12 dBi. You know, not too bad, not too shabby on 15. 20, start to lose a little bit. You know, we're about 10 dBi, 22 degrees. And then we start to see on 40 meters, things really start to change rapidly. 8 dBi, 38 degrees. And of course, on 75, on 80 meters, I hate to call it a cloud burner, but I guess we will, to some degree, right? Not much happening there, as we can tell. But with this antenna in QRP, I did work CN2AA at 2.5 watts. And that was during worldwide, oh golly, I think it was 3-4 years ago, on phone. So it still works pretty well, for that purpose, QRP on 80. So for fun, Bill, you did this, I think back 5-6 years ago. ARRL did their centennial.
Yes.
And, and they did all the work, WNAW / portable stations. Each station in the US had a week, I think it was, throughout the year. And they operated W1AW portable. It is like guest stations type thing. So just for the heck of it, I did I worked all the states that W1AW was putting on the air. I worked them twice, actually. First time at 5 watts. And then I went back again. I did them at 2.5 watts on phone, and also had CW mixed in there, but I did all states with just phone. Which was kind of neat, and got an award for that. Bill, I think you got one too, if I recall, for doing that. DXCC, I haven't counted. I'm not so much of an awards chaser per se, but I've got over 200 entities on QRP. I just haven't, I don't have all the cards. I don't even have a DXCC yet. I haven't submitted for it. It's just one of those things, just kind of sitting there. One of these days I'll get to it. Best miles per watt. QRPers will sometimes talk about miles per watt, right? And they break it down. So probably 4,400 miles per watt. And that was 2.5 watts with station down in Perth. But I got to say, my most exciting DX to date is a conversation I had. I think his name was Sergey, R-I-1-A-N-C, and he was a scientist down at the Russian research station down in the Antarctic, and worked him 20-meter SSB at 2.5 watts. And that was a few years ago. Actually had about a 15-20 minute conversation with him, and somebody put it on the cluster. And before you know it, every other time, we were kind of going back and forth with our conversation, folks were like, hey, this guy's running QRP, working RI1ANC. Everybody wanted a piece of it, right? So conversation kind of went bad fast, so to speak. So that was the end of that. But it was really neat and carried on for quite some time with that. So contesting, like I said, I do contesting QRP style. I work 4 primary contests. I work worldwide, I work WIPIX, I do international DX, and I do the sweepstakes with ARRL. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, my code speed's about 20 words per minute. And I'm working with Morse Runner, trying to get everything up, but I mostly work sideband contest. I just haven't, and Greg has helped a lot. I mean, I've borrowed some of his rigs in the past when I was relying completely on my 817 because of the nasty filters I had with CW. But I'm still trying to get in the mix of, I have a hard time deciphering, right, between 5, 6, 10 or more stations all calling at the same time and trying to break them apart. So we'll see. I dabble with CW for contesting, but I haven't gone that way committed yet. I'll make 70, 80 contacts in a contest and I just don't submit. But for sideband contest, as a QRPer, I've learned over the years that you shouldn't work the first 2 hours, in my opinion, of a contest. As a QRPer, there's just too much going on, too much excitement, too many pileups, and you just can't compete. And it's just going to lead to an awful lot of frustration. So I always wait, 10 o'clock at night. That's when I'll kind of start. Contests generally start 7, 8 o'clock, depending upon the time change here. So I'll wait till 10, you know, rest up a little bit, then start, and I'll work till late in the morning, early in the morning, I should say. I've learned not to use the cluster, right? That's just more frustration, more pileups, things of that nature. Search and pounce is definitely my best friend. The way I do it is I start on the bottom of the band, I work up, and then I work back. And if I get to a pile up, I'll give them 3, 4, maybe 5 calls. And if they don't answer right back, then I move on and return later. Just make a note of it. Sundays, usually near the end of the contest, you know, we all been there. Everything kind of slows down, right? Just not much going on. That's the best time for me as a QRPer to make stations, because stations are absolutely begging for contacts, and they'll listen, you know. If I've got a weak signal, I've learned over the years that some of the big, you know, the big contest stations are not going to listen for me as a weaker signal. So I go back on Sunday and I generally clean up on that. But probably the most important thing I've learned, especially working this QRP style, is that you can't let the signal strength fool you. You know, I've worked a lot of JAs, a lot of South American stations that are coming in maybe 5.4, 5.3, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not even going to bother to call them because they're not going to hear me. But I give them a call and they come right back, and I'm always stupefied by that. You know how easy it is to do it. And they
Some
can
guys have
hear
good ears and others don't.
Well, that's exactly it. And I got to be honest with you, I got to give a lot of credit to the contest stations, right? Because I mean, I'm throwing out not much, and they're the ones that are going through all the rough, you know, to pull me out, make that contact, and get her done. So I give more credit to them than I give myself for contesting in DX, because I think a lot of times QRPers seem to forget, you know, that on the other end, someone's really got to be going to an effort sometimes to pull us out of the weeds. So that's you know, kind of QRP and DX for me. So POTA, gotta mention POTA just a little bit. Any of you guys familiar with POTA? You do Parks on the Air? You, Scott? Yeah, okay. Willie, I got to get you doing Parks on the Air, because I need Hawaii to work all states for POTA. So it's a great program, lots of fun. It's an independent program. It's not affiliated with ARRL. It's not affiliated with CQ. A guy named Jason Johnston started this a few years ago, W3AAX. And this is kind of a spinoff from the ARRL National Parks program that was done several years ago. I don't know if y'all remember that or not, but they activated a bunch of national parks when the national parks had their anniversary.
Yeah.
So what it is that each park is its own entity. It could be a park, it could be a fish hatchery, but it's a designated location, and each one has a designated number that goes with it. But you either hunt these parks, or, you know, if you're at home, you work them, you're a hunter, or you go out and you activate them. And I primarily activate them because I like working portable. So that means I go to the park, set up a station, and put it on the air. And to date, working QRP 4 watts or less, because I don't work 5 watts, I have to be different. I work 4 watts or less, or 2.5 watts if I got my 817. And to date, I've done over 2,000 contacts in the Parks on the Air program, 1,100 of which have been camping up near the Sioux at Brimley State Park. I've done 1,100 contacts from that one park activating. And then I've done to date 700 contacts from Traverse City State Park. And that's what you see in the photo down at the bottom. That's Traverse City State Park. I go down there and I commandeer one of the picnic tables. I get a great view of the bay. I sit there and I make contacts. And I'll do maybe 100, 125 contacts in about hour and a half, 2 hours time. And
how many parks on the list, if there is a list?
Yeah, there's a list. If you go to parksontheair.com or just type in POTA.com, I want to say the last one I've seen is like over 2,500 or more parks. And that's just here in the States. This has become a worldwide thing now. Europe is doing it, and it's all part of the same program. South America, and they're putting their parks on the air. And the cool thing about it is that the activator does all the work. So when you go out and you activate a park, you make your list of contacts, 100 plus parks, or I should say contacts. The activator comes back and uploads it into the system, into the POTA system, and the POTA system tracks everything for everybody. And there's all sorts of awards and things of that nature you can get. But yeah, there's like over 2,000 parks, I believe, that do this.
Wow.
But
Scott,
yeah.
so you said you need Hawaii, so you have to talk to somebody here that's in a park also?
That's in a park. So Willie, I need you
Okay.
to go to a park and set up operation, and then we'll work something out. So I know you're on and we'll work one another.
Antenna's a challenge, but okay.
Antenna challenge. Well, so that's over on the right. You'll see what I'm using. I'm using an inverted V, right? 25 feet up. That's at Traverse City State Park. I feed it with 300 ohm twin lead. And I think it's about 55 feet long, down and over to the picnic table that you see on the left, and it's plugged right into my tuner. So that's actually a 40 meter dipole, but I'll use it on 20 and 15 as well. I just make it work with the tuner, obviously. And that's what I've used for making all my contacts with that.
Wow.
The other cool thing about POTA is it allows a QRP operator to be the center or center of a pileup, right? Because if you go on your phone, you can go to the POTA website, you can put in, hey, this is KA8SMA, I'm at park such and such, and it goes out like they have their own cluster, so to speak. And before you know it, you'll have gobs of people trying to call you because they want to contact Traverse City State Park. And the reason for that is because some people are award chasers, and there's just a slew of different awards that you can get, and they track them on the website. You can print these awards out if you wanted, but they just kind of track them all right here. But this is recent activation I did. For example, they'll track everything, like I was saying, Traverse City State Park, and made 102 contacts back on November 7th, I think it is. And then over here, my recent 100 QSOs on December 4th was with this park, wherever it may be. I can't read it real well. So POTA is something really neat, something to consider. And the best part of it is that I work at QRP, and it gets me out of the house, right? Kind of away from the shack, so to speak. And I do all this because I work QRP. I can fit everything in a backpack. And this is what I have. I've got this board right here. I wrap my twin lead around it. I wrap each leg of the dipole, just simple. I've got some clasps on it. I just kind of carry this in one hand and then sling the backpack over my back. I don't take a laptop out in the field. I write everything down in a notebook and upload it to the computer when I get back. And as you can see, I chew the heck out of my pen, I just noticed, when I'm out there doing my POTA events. So wanted to talk real quick. This is, you saw back here in this previous one, my Russian TX500. And that's what I've been using primarily for POTA and all my portable work. And I've been really seriously thinking about it using here in the shack. I've got an ICOM 7300. I use it 2 to 5 watts out. I turn the power way down. But I'm thinking that for the winter, I might switch things around a little bit and try this indoors, because I'm not going to be able to get out and do all my portable as I'd like to do. So this is it's basically, it's an SDR radio. It's made in Ufa, Russia, which is in south central Russia, just north of Kazakhstan. And I wanted that, my wife bought this for me. It was set up to come last Christmas. She bought it in like October 2020. Yeah, 2020. We didn't get it until April 21. And it was all because of COVID delays, right? I mean, there was a little bit of a part shortage, but a lot of it was COVID. They had to shut. It's a really small company, 18 people at the factory. They had to shut down because of COVID. You can get this on ham radio outlet, and they're still sold out. They're coming in batches, several hundred at a time, and they're being distributed, and they're trying to get their stock built up, but it's been really tough. Covers 160 through 6 meters, runs on 9 to 15 volt DC, which is perfect. for battery operation, obviously. I use lithium iron phosphate batteries out in the field for it. 1 to 10 watts. I run it at 4. Weighs just over a pound. One of the cool things about this radio, it's got 6 connectors. So I've got 3 on this side and then 3 on the other side. And 5 of these connectors are GX12 aviation connectors, right? So kind of similar to, I think that on a typical microphone on some rigs, it's like a GX16 connector. This is a little bit smaller GX12, but each connector has its own number of pins. So like this one that I've got shown below the radio is a 4-pin. And the 4-pin on this one, I think goes to the mic and speaker, if I'm not mistaken. They have a 2-pin that goes for the power. Then there's a 5-pin for the data, and then a 6-pin over on the other side, and so on. So it's virtually impossible to mix the connectors up for the radio. So if you're trying to plug your battery in 12-volt DC, you can't mistakenly plug it into your mic or speaker connector, right? Because it's just not going to fit. So that's kind of a neat, different twist.
Can you just go over to Radio Shack and buy all those plugs, or?
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. So I actually, because I made a switch box for this. So the way this radio works, not to get too far ahead, there's no speaker. It's a speaker mic that you plug in. And it's a great speaker mic. I mean, the audio is really crisp, but I don't like it. So I'm the kind of guy that likes to have a separate speaker, an external speaker. So I made a switch box, and I on Amazon, I was able to buy these GX12 connectors. And I got a hold of the folks out in Russia, and I said, look, send me the specs, send me the schematic, because I want to do my own wiring for this connector, because I want to split your microphone from your speaker. So they sent me all the schematics and everything. Not a big deal to do, but you know, once you've done that, it's you know, I've done other things with the connectors on here too. So yeah, you can get the connectors readily available, and they're not too expensive. They're about $3-4 a piece.
How much is the radio?
So the radio started out at 700. Now it's not. Yeah, now it's 900, but it's a lot cheaper than a 705, which last I saw was $1,400. And for those of you, y'all are familiar with the 705. You've all seen it, one, right? You got one. Would you take it out in the field?
Well, I do, but I only use it for receive. I use it for my noise radio, but I thought it would be a good QRP radio for those of us who would be so inclined.
Yeah, you know, I've used it one time, had an opportunity to do it, spent a couple hours with it, and I like the radio. I just don't know if I'd take it out and do what I do with some of my radio.
It seems kind of fragile to you.
Yeah, it does. And I'll show you in a second. This is what attracted me to this particular radio. This thing's like a brick. And I'll show you why in a second. But
don't you take your 7300 out there? It's basically the same as a 705.
And I've taken my 7300 out. It is like a 705, but that damn screen on it, right, is so large, I'd have to get some sort of protector. I'm the kind of guy that would be afraid to put it in a backpack and then drop it or put it on a picnic table and end up cracking the screen or something on the 705. We got a screen on this one, but I probably should have spent a little bit more time with this radio. When you flip it on its side, this is designed so you can turn it upside down and nothing will hit the buttons or any of the keys on here at all. You know, it's just the design of the radio. But 100 milliamps on receive for current draw. It's got a pan adapter, adjustable filters, and it's water resistant. So the manufacturer actually shows folks out using this radio in the rain. You know, supposedly all the knobs, buttons have gaskets, and there is of course no speaker. So if it does get wet, nothing's going to theoretically get inside the radio.
Yeah.
So
why looks military a little bit.
It looks a little military, right? And probably the neatest thing is that they actually mill it from a block of aluminum. And this is what makes it so damn tough, like a brick. They actually mill it out. They've got sidewall channels in here for different portions, different aspects of the radio, and then it just kind of clasps together, and that's it. So
Scott, have you embraced the SDR technology on CW? How do you think it's going to work in the contest?
I'm, yeah, SDR for, hey, I gotta be honest with you, after using that 817 all those years, that's why I went with the 7300, because it was so cheap. And I mean, I think I paid $8.99 for it, and ended up getting a cheap power supply and some other gizmo that the folks sent me with it that just kind of went in the junk drawer. But it is a step up from what I'm using for sure, what I have used over the years. And I'm hoping that, you know, so this particular radio for CW, I haven't used it a lot for CW because I've been working with the Paraset and some other radios I've got, and I use my Spirits, which is a double super hat, which works really well for CW. But this, you know, it's a bit of a game changer for me, you know, for sure, from what I've been used to. On the, let's see here. So then one thing that the QRP world kind of has their eyes on is a company you may or may not have heard of, QRP Labs. Guy over in Europe, Hans Summers, G3 UPL, started this company back in 2000. I think he went full time with it back in 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. And this guy is known for, up here on the left, he's got the QCX plus CW transceiver, 5-watt SDR transceiver, all mode. You know, it's kind of a gangbusters transceiver in the QRP arena. And then he went a little bit smaller. He had a big demand. So many people like the QSX plus, they said, make it smaller. So he did. And he went with surface mount technology. And you can see here, it actually fits in the palm of his hand. And, you know, this one is definitely suitable size for taking out in the field. It's not too huge, it's relatively lightweight, but people want it smaller, so he gave it to him. And so a lot of folks follow him because of those two rigs. And recently, he came out with the QCD, I believe it is, which is a digital 5-watt transceiver, and that's sold out. And I don't know when it's going to become available again. It pretty much sold out overnight when he offered it. But everybody is looking forward to the QSX, which is in design, and that's going to be an all-mode QRP transceiver. It's going to be about the size of the QCX Plus, 160 through 10, 1 to 10 watts, lots of features, going to have a keyer, memories, dual VFOs, all that jazz. And supposedly, if this all works out, it's going to be in kit form. It's going to be $175.
Wow, that's a lot.
So
that's good.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge, well, it is a huge deal right now in the QRP arena. A lot of folks are waiting for this to come out. Hans will not release it. He's the kind of guy that he has to make sure all the bugs are worked out. He's pretty much a one-man show. I think he might have a couple other people working with him, but you know, he's the kind of guy that until it's perfect, it's not going to get released. And he's been working on it for the last couple of years. So this will be a sellout as soon as it hits the market. And I'm planning to pick one of those up. So that'll be kind of neat. So that's what I've got for QRP, kind of hitting a little bit of everything. And of course, you've got my little cartoon here at the end, going from QRO to QRP, right?
Nice.
So,